So, hello everyone. Welcome to Allcore Devs number 143, first one on a Thursday. A couple things today. On the merge side, we wanted to discuss setting the merge net split blocks for Sepolia. And then on the CL call last week, we discussed EL clients activating the authenticated ports before the merge and wanted to continue this conversation some more. Then on the Goerli side, we've kind of agreed on the Bellatrix, epoch height and TTD, but we can check in on that. There was also the Goerli shadow fork happening literally minutes ago. And then some updates on MEV-Boost. Beyond that, yeah, we also had some updates on EIP 4444, which we've been kind of punting from call to call recently. But there's been some work done on that, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I guess to kick it off, on the Sepolia. So on the last call, we discussed the idea of setting the Sepolia and Ropsten merge split blocks. We decided not to do it for Ropsten because Ropsten is considered deprecated already. And for Sepolia, we had, I believe, floated the idea of combining this with the Goerli merge releases. And I know, Marius, I think you were the one who wanted to discuss that last call, but you couldn't make it. So yeah, maybe do you want to just share your thoughts about this and how you think we should go forward?
I don't really, I don't remember that I wanted to discuss this, but I also don't have any particular opinion either way. But I think if we're going to have a release, we can also specify the Sepolia net split block. I think it just makes sense to have it in the same release because then we're not wasting more time. Yeah, it should just be a small change. Everyone should have already implemented the merge net split block in their code, and so it should just be setting the parameter for the Sepolia. Danny?
Yeah, I just wanted to say in terms of, I think it's valuable to do just so that we go through all the motions before mainnet, that we do Sepolia soon. And so, you know, on that release timeframe, and then maybe because it's also easy to coordinate because of the fixed validator set, and then deal with Goerli after mainnet and deal with mainnet after mainnet.
Any opposition to specifying the Sepolia merge block in the next releases for clients? Okay, then we'll make some calculations what we want the merge net split block to be, and we can probably just, oh, we don't need to have a big discussion about it. We make the calculations and update everyone on the Allcore Devs about it, and everyone puts their on Discord about it. Everyone puts their thumbs up, and then we can put it in the next release with the Goerli TTD.
Yeah. So just based on Danny's chat comment. So that means we would have the next releases going out from client teams like next week for the Goerli fork. We have Bellatrix happening on like the first week of August. I think we said August 4th. Then we have TTD on Goerli happening on like the second week of August. And I think it's like now estimated between like the 8th and the 10th or something. And then maybe the week after that, we have TTD happen, or the merge split block happening on Sepolia. So like, yeah, the week of like the 15th or something like that. Does that seem reasonable to people?
I think we could also just put it in the same week as one of the other things.
We
It's
just,
not a
yes.
big
So we
fork,
don't know
but
when Goerli's going to happen, though, right? Because the POA. Whereas with Sepolia, we can kind of know because the block times are fixed now, or at least we can know the earliest it could happen. Maris,
well,
do you want to explain to Paul?
yes.
Yep.
So merge net split block is basically just an empty fork on the execution layer that does nothing. It's just a hard fork, and we don't really need it, but it makes P2P discovery way easier because we will verify the fork ID. Basically, every node tells us on which fork it is pretty early in the protocol, and so we can verify that the other node is on the same fork as we are, and if they are not, then we can drop them. So from my point of view, we can just have this fork happening 1 week after the release.
Well, it's just, I guess, yeah, just from a communications perspective, it's probably easier to just focus on the Goerli merge because the Goerli Bellatrix forks will happen 1 week after the release.
Yeah.
So it's probably just easier to tell people Goerli's happening, and then after that, Sepolia is doing that. And that would also match what would happen for Goerli and for mainnet, where like we do the Goerli split block kind of in the same release as the mainnet merge, but targeted for later after like the mainnet merge, and then and then for mainnet we do that just after the merge in a separate release.
Yep.
Cool. Any objections or thoughts from other client teams, or does that sound good for everyone? Okay, we got some thumbs up. Cool. And then yeah, the next thing we wanted to chat about, Paul, I think you started this conversation on the CL call last week, but the idea of having EL clients activate the authenticated port before the merge happens. Do you want to give some quick context there?
Yeah, sure. So the idea is having EL clients opening the auth port before the merge parameters are specified. So for instance, on mainnet, turning on, allowing us to use the auth port now, even though the merge parameters have not been decided yet for mainnet. That means that users can start setting up their EL and CL exactly as it should be run for the merge now, rather than having to wait for the merge parameters to be specified. This is particularly useful because we've just put in a bunch of stuff about merge readiness so that we'll start logging to users. Say we wanted to do 2 weeks, but we can't do it now because the EL teams aren't opening their ports. But we're doing it 1 week now before Prada will start logging warnings if you're not set up properly for the merge. We want to have that a long time before the real merge. So yeah, hopefully that's enough information.
Yeah, so we have a PR open for that for Geth for a long time, and we also talked about it and agreed that this is what we want to do. So we just need someone to push the button.
Nice. And
cool. I haven't tested all the other clients either, so I'm not sure where they're at either.
We are working in this way already, so it's not a problem for Nethermind.
Is there a reason Geth hasn't pushed the button yet, Marius, or is it just no one's gotten around to hitting the button?
No one has gotten around to hitting the button. I cannot. I made the PR, so I cannot push the button myself.
Well, you can if you have approval.
I don't think so. It doesn't matter. We don't. Yeah.
Okay, but this will be part of the. I guess you can have this as part of the Goerli merge release next week, right? If it's just clicking the button.
Yes.
Awesome. Besu?
To be honest, I didn't 100% follow that, other than that we were going to have a warning if the CL is not got an engine API for the execution layer up to some portion ahead of the fork. Is that right?
Yeah, so the idea is that we want to be able to have the consensus layer talking to the execution layer through the auth port. We want to be able to do that basically from now and not waiting until the merge parameters are defined. Yeah, does that make sense? So
yeah,
yeah,
that makes sense. One of the current configurations of Besu is that if we don't have a terminal total difficulty, we don't enable the engine API. We could probably change that behavior so that if we don't have a TTD, we can go ahead and have the engine API active.
yeah, cool. That'd be super handy. Yeah, it helps users set up their configurations early, set up their DevOps early.
Okay. Yeah, we'll get a ticket for that.
Thank you.
And Aragon?
I think we already have the engine API available even if there is no TTD.
Okay, awesome. Great. Yeah, that's really good to hear. Any other comments, thoughts on this? Okay. I guess next up, just to give a quick update on Goerli. So we kind of chose the blocks or the epoch, height, and TTD earlier this week. So for anyone listening, the Praetor epoch, which will activate Bellatrix and kind of ready Praetor to merge with Goerli, is epoch 112260, which is expected on August 4th at 12:24 UTC. And then the TTD that we're going to use for the transition on Goerli is 10790000, which we expect to happen the week after. So the difficulty on proof of authority, which Goerli use, varies a lot, but it should happen sometime between the 6th and the 12th, and more likely between the 8th and the 10th. Yeah, so that's when the Goerli merge is happening. So people should be on the lookout for an announcement for that. And then for the announcement, if it's possible to have client releases out in the first half of next week, that'd be ideal. So we can just communicate those by the end of next week. Does that sound reasonable to everyone? Okay. No one complaining. So that's good. And yeah, if you're a staker or listening, running through kind of the merge on Goerli is the last chance you're going to get to test everything before mainnet. So if you want to ensure that everything works through the entire process, now's the time to do it. If you don't want to wait for the Goerli merge, the Ropsten network has a public validator set as well. So you can stand up a node on Ropsten and basically set up all of your configurations, and it's the exact same process as it will be. So even though you don't run through the merge, kind of setting up everything to operate post-merge is the same. So that's something that people can do if they don't want to wait for the Goerli merge, but to run through the entire transition, this is the last time. Yeah. Mika?
And this isn't just for stakers. Everyone who is running a client this is your last chance to test the merge. And if you're running just an EL right now, you will need to install and set up a consensus layer client before the merge. Otherwise, your node will stop working.
Correct. Yes. Thank you. Yeah. So yeah, not just stakers. But obviously, if you just run a node and turn it off and turn it on after the merge, there's no economic penalties. But if you want to stay up through the entire process, you need to have the same infrastructure. Yeah. Yes, and if you're an exchange, hopefully you're already well aware of all this. And but yeah, please start looking into it now. And the blog post next week will have all the Goerli specific client versions, but all the clients that are out today support Ropsten if you want to try that out before the announcement. Anything else on Goerli? Okay.
Is this a good time to
Yep.
talk about the shadow fork that's happening right now, or does it?
Oh, yeah, actually it is. Yes.
Yeah, I can
yeah,
give
cool.
you guys an update on that one. So yeah, the shadow fork happened roughly an hour ago. We did have a TTD override earlier today. I think we were around like the 98-ish% participation rate before. Shortly before we hit TTD, I noticed the Nimbus Bezu node ran out of space. We have 2 of them, so it's not a big deal. But yeah, so that would bring down the maximum possible to like 95%. And I think currently we're about 86, 87%. We're looking into the missing clients, but it looks like Prism Nethermind's returning an error for a fork choice update. And there's one Teku Nethermind that might need some help on some other front. And I think Prism Aragon is stuck, but it might have actually continued now. I need to still look into that. I'll post like a complete update once client teams have had time to look into it. But because we run more than one node of each client pair, the issues also don't seem like inherent to one client pair. Like there are 2 Prism Nethermind nodes, one is fine, one isn't. So it might not be a client issue. It might just be the sync state the client was in when TTD was hit, etc. Nonetheless, we'll still look into it and report back.
Nice. So we've gone from like issues with clients to issues with client pairs to now issues with specific instances of client pairs. That's good.
Is the approximate number of block proposals equivalent to the approximate number of attestations? So something like 85%?
Usually that's also, I just quickly ran ETH2 and it looks like it's about that.
Got it. Cool. Thank you.
We still, of course, have to look into how many transactions are being included and sync aggregate participation rates. Sync aggregate actually looks really good. We're at 90-ish% for the entire hour almost. So that's nice.
Cool. Anything else on the shadow fork?
Yeah, we will be having a mainnet shadow fork next week. I think it's scheduled for the 5th. Config should be out. And the other thing is we will be testing MEV-Boost on Goerli shadow fork tomorrow. As far as I know, the relay is up, but we wanted to wait until tomorrow to like have enough eyes on it so we can set them up manually and have a look at it with both teams present.
Cool.
We'll report back on how that goes. Yeah.
Thanks, Barry. Anyone else have anything on the shadow fork? Okay. Okay, then next up, we have Leo with an update on MEV-Boost and preventing liveness failures, even though MEV-Boost has some issues. Yeah, do you want to give a quick update there?
Sure, I will be short this time. So our main priority is not to break the blockchain, right? We currently have this good enough setup that relies on a trusted relay, and we are figuring out what comes next to make things permissionless. But we want to make sure that we test the conditions that could break the network. So this is just to get some eyes on this issue that I linked on the MEV-Boost repository. We will be making a brainstorming of the things that could affect the liveness of the network. The most basic case, like this, I will insist this is already better to what we have on proof of work because of this sidecar design that we agreed to, which I think enables us to do a lot of experimentation without a lot of risk. So in the case where there's one trusted relay and things start to become weird, the solution is just to put offline the relay, and then the consensus clients will just switch to local building. So a point there is to make sure that this mechanism is in place on all the consensus clients. We're relying on this. And well, then more conditions. What happens if Flashbots becomes evil and it has a lot of usage? And well, the basic case, the not so strong case, the people who have permission to monitor and put the relay offline are like 4 or 5. So this is not just one person going rogue. This requires like a coordinated effort that alleviates some of the pressure, but still not good enough, right? So let's think about all the possible conditions. We have the issue open about designing a relay monitor. In the case that there are multiple relays that get a lot of usage, but then we need to figure out what we are monitoring and how this translates on an evaluation of risk for the proposers and what they are willing to sacrifice in order to get more reward, or maybe this should be just like a binary. This is a suspicious relay. Don't use it for now. I'll get more permissionless designs. So if you have ideas, if you have concerns, issue 222. And now that we're testing Goerli and preparing on the test nets with relevant data, it would be, I think, required to test these conditions. So once we have a good amount of validators on Goerli using MEV-Boost and using the relay, then we shut the relay for an hour and see what happens. Or we try some other like more extreme conditions that will shake the network and that will inform us like where are the holes, what things are vulnerable. And I think we will be more confident to put this on production on mainnet at the merge. Any thoughts? All right, so I insist, please take a look at the issue. We will be bringing this to the next week's call to talk to the consensus clients, make sure that everybody's aligned, and see what kind of checks can be implemented on the relay, on MEV-Boost, or on the client implementations. Thank you, Tim.
Cool. Yeah, thank you for the update. And I shared the issue in the chat for people. Anything else on the merge generally? Okay. Then next up, we have an update from Henry, who's been working on EIP 4.4s for the past couple months, and we've had to move this update like across the past 3 or 4 core devs call because we were so busy. So yeah, now we have the time to go over it. But yeah, Henry, you want to give a quick kind of recap on what you've been doing, and then kind of the draft EIP that you have?
Yeah, sure, Tim. Thanks. So yeah, hi everyone. I want to give a quick update on this work. Maybe just some background. I'm not going to do a, well, EIP is pretty, EIP 4.4 is pretty straightforward. So, and a really quick description is basically it's an EIP that seeks to limit the amount of historical data, specifically not state blocks, blocks, receipts, headers that nodes need to keep, and it so the goal being limit the amount of storage for historical data past some age, as well as limit the amount of P2P traffic for syncing that data. EIP 4.4 is quite general in that it's it addresses this in a general manner in a way that would be applicable both today and post merge. Basically it says age out data past some certain age. The work I've been doing recently is a kind of a first step that we feel, along specifically with the EIP authors, that will be a good first step, and we have a good opportunity for this soon, which is apply EIP 4.4s for pre-merge history. So soon we're going to have the merge point, and then sometime after that, we could potentially say, hey, you don't need to keep all the blocks and headers unless you want to. At least you don't need to serve them. If people want to sync those blocks, they would get them out of band. That's kind of the high level context. And so the work I've been doing here is, well, let's assume we were in that situation and we wanted to do this, and we have consensus and so forth. How do we distribute these blocks? What is it going to look like? And so I've got, let me post. Oh, great. I see Tim's posted everything in the chat already. So the first link is a link to a repo that has basically SSE specs for encoding a run of blocks with the headers and receipts into SSZ. So maybe a little kind of context here. I think initially there was some agreement amongst a bunch of people who discussed this that, well, we could store this in RLP as is the current export format, but I think everyone agreed that we wanted to move on from that for a bunch of reasons. And SSZ, given that we're using that extensively in the beacon chain, it felt like a good time to move this data to that format. And well, it's, of course, we use this in the beacon chain extensively. Some of the nice things we get for free by doing this, or the one key thing we get for free by storing this data in SSE here, is that we kind of get out of the box the hash root computation and all of that. So with these block archives, we can then provide the witness hash root just directly through the SSE machinery that does that for us. Now, the format itself, I'm not going to walk through everything. I'll just kind of describe the high level outline, but this is definitely something that I'd be interested in feedback on. Well, there's kind of two levels to this. There's a general approach, and then if the general approach is, is agreed on, then there's all the kind of details of the SSZ specification itself, which, the more eyeballs we get on this, the better, and including down to like low-level tweaks and minor changes. I think that it'd be great to have some people scrutinizing this at some point. But the high-level idea is this borrows from the beacon chain execution payload layout pretty extensively, but with a few adaptations in that, here we're talking about proof of work blocks right now. So these need to have uncles, and there's a couple of fields that were repurposed, but it's pretty close to that. Unfortunately, it's not identical, but it's pretty close, or it's extremely close. And so that's the basis of it. And then there's an archive header container. I'm looking at the first link that Tim pointed, which is, well, actually the EIP draft has the same information. There's an archive header container, an archive body is just, sorry, there's an archive body, which is just a list, an SSE list of these blocks. So we can get the hash tree over that list, rather than say concatenate them outside of SSE, just concatenate them into a file. We put them in an SSE list. That makes encoding, decoding a bit more resource intensive, as you need to read everything in, but it allows us to get the hashing. And then there's a little header with a version and a couple of fields on which block range which block range is contained following the header. So so that's pretty much it. In terms of what the format is, again, I don't think this is the right place to go and read through every line, but there is quite a lot of SSE definitions, so feedback and will be welcome. In the repo, that's that EIP44's-proto repo, the first link, there's a tool that can take input RLP and convert it to this SSE format and vice versa, and print out hash roots and do a bunch of basic manipulation of this format. Yeah, one caveat here is I said it converts to and from RLP. That is RLP. Given that this SSE format encodes receipts as well, regular RLP exports, at least the one that I know the best are the ones from Geth, they don't have receipts. So I had a branch on Geth that included receipts in the RLP export. That was a short-lived branch. So you can't use those RLPs directly, but you can. There's a switch in this tool to do non-receipts, and then that will work. Separately, there's a PR going up on Geth, or that's up on Geth. I think that's in draft form that adds this to Geth. So we'll see if it gets in, but I think there was some interest in that. So ideally, we'll get to a point where you'll be able to export this SSE directly from Geth. And then that tool that I just mentioned, that was my prototyping tool, will still be useful for like examining files and maybe still converting them and stuff like that. But you won't have to go through like all the gymnastics to export from Geth. So yeah, that's roughly the current status. I think that the next steps, well, of course, getting feedback, the next steps, if I'm continuing down this path, are going to be, well, actually doing a full export on Goerli, and then since we have the merge soon, hopefully being able to see what that would look like and potentially re-import it into a fresh node post Goerli merge. The PR is up on Geth, and yeah, if there's agreement and consensus on this, then we'll start looking at the distribution mechanisms for these files. I guess I should have just given a bit of context. So the idea here is, if you talk about the full export of mainnet up to the merge, that's a pretty, it was in the 300-ish gigabytes, if I'm uncompressed, if I'm remembering correctly now. And so compressed, maybe it's a 2x, but that's, that's going to be a fairly large number of files. We'll have to find out, well, we'll want to have multiple places to host and distribute them, and then one place to host the hash root for all of this data. But that's, that'll come a little later. So yeah, I think that's roughly everything I wanted to go over on this. Again, 2 links are there. Feedback very welcome on the repo or in the Discord, or there's a history expiry channel in the ETH R&D Discord, which we can use for discussions related to this. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Any questions, comments, thoughts?
So you mentioned that this is the shape of these things are brought mostly over from the beacon blocks with a few minor modifications. Looking at this, these modifications seem to be interspersed throughout it. Does SSZ not benefit just in terms of modularity and reuse of code from putting all the new stuff on the end, so that way you can just inherit from the beacon block header?
Good question. I might be missing something with SSZ. So you're saying if we had exactly the beacon block struct and we added things at the end, we could inherit?
Yeah, so like with RLP at least, if you add things to the end, it's much easier to reuse code than if you add things in the middle.
Yeah.
Just due to the nature of RLP. I don't know SSZ well enough to know if that is true there as well. But if so, it seems like a big win, just so we don't have to have like 2 different things. You just have one and then the extension.
Yeah. I'm not aware of that. I'll go and take a second look. I think this might also be implementation specific. I've been using the Go fast SSZ library pretty much exclusively. But yeah, I agree that if we could do that, that would be great. I'll take a second look to see if I missed something, but I'm not aware of anything like that. I don't think that's possible.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. Well, yeah, thank you very much, Henry. And yeah, it will be super exciting, I think, to see that on Goerli. After, I guess, yeah, just maybe my gut feeling is it would be quite valuable to run this full export on Goerli right before the merge, or like right after the merge, whatever, on the pre-merge data, and then re-import it on a fresh node after. Like, does that generally seem sensible to others as well?
I feel like at some point we should talk about whether we actually want this and will implement it before we go too far down the road. And I think last I heard, there is not consensus that this is a desired path for Ethereum. I'm a fan personally, but I don't want to waste people's time if we can't get consensus.
I think we don't have consensus on whether we want to drop the history from the nodes, but I think we have, at least the way I gauge it, we have consensus on that this is something that's cool to have as a secondary mechanism.
Yeah, and I think it's almost like before we probably feel comfortable dropping it fully from the nodes, you want to know that this secondary mechanism works reliably. Does that make sense, Maris?
Yeah, that's exactly what I at least want to see before I would vote for that.
So I think in that case, then yeah, definitely running the experiment on Goerli and showing it working is a really valuable first step. Yeah. Does anyone disagree with that? Okay. Sweet. So I guess, yeah, that's pretty much it. There were just two quick announcements. First, there's going to be another EIP 4844 breakout call next Friday at 14 UTC. The agenda is linked in this agenda, but basically some updates on implementations, the KZG stuff, and some of the spec issues as well. So yeah, if you're interested in that, you can show up there. And then Alex, you had also something around the builder spec that you wanted to bring people's attention to.
Yeah, I just wanted to call it out. This is mainly for CO clients, but in the event that some of you are here, which you are, just please take a look. It was around essentially some kind of embargo that we'll have on MEV-Boost going through the merge transition itself. We had agreed on a particular strategy in the last CL call. I've updated the PR to reflect that. So if everyone could just take a look, and then we'll discuss next week.
Cool. Thank you. And that's a PR 38 in the builder spec repo.
Yeah, I'll grab, there we go.
And question here, which maybe it's better to discuss next week. Do you want some action from us? Like, should the relay be offline anyway until that period approaches? Or are there some checks that we should do on the relay? Or should this be local, just enforced by the validators and proposers?
My gut feel is it'd be safer to let the validator enforce it until builder is available, because if the validator happens to depend on the relay, it's kind of better for it to be there. But I'm not strong on that.
I would be tempted to lean towards leaving the relay on as well. It's one less thing to forget to turn back on, I guess, but also not strongly held.
All right, we have time to figure out the actual process on this. I think it's sensible. My ask here is like come up with crazy ideas of like announcing this, like the first blocks will have no MEV-Boost relay. Is there something that could happen? Seems very complicated. Like it's not a big window, and it's going to be super hard to coordinate it to affect it in significant ways. But still, it would be good to make just the brainstorming of what could go wrong. Yeah, this makes sense. Thank you, Alex.
Cool. Anything else anyone wanted to bring up?
Yeah, I can jump in.
Oh, yes, please do.
Is my audio? Okay. Yeah, just really quick. Every 2 weeks, we've been running an open KZG ceremony call. There's the 4th call, so it's been a little over a month or two. Yeah, we're setting the stage for proto-dank sharding, but in order to do that, we need to design and implement this trusted setup ceremony. If people are familiar with that, that's made famous by Zcash and many other projects. It's a big coordinated ceremony to generate a number, and then the number is input into the protocol. So, and then proto-dank sharding would make use of that number, the cryptographic construction. So we're working on that as in parallel with all the merge efforts, kind of like what Henry is doing with 4.4. So if anybody's interested in engaging with this, learning more about it, like I said, we run regular calls, and anybody's welcome to join. And we hope to see many people creating their own implementations. So if this is something that sounds interesting to you, please do put the link to the latest call, and that will maybe direct you to more interesting things. The specs repo is also linked there as well. But yeah, just sharing that. We just had our 4th call this morning, a few hours ago, and then it'll be again in 2 weeks if you want to join the next one.
Thanks. Oh, and there is, Perry, do you want to give some context on that?
Yeah, I don't really have more context other than one of the nodes just decided to self-heal after like half an hour. We will still figure out what's happening there. And I think the Nethermind team might have made some headway on some of the other issues.
Nice.
Yeah. I think one remind the node self-healed itself too, but still analyzing requests from others.
Nice. That's really good to see. Sweet. Anything else before we wrap up? Okay. Well, thanks everyone. We'll see you in 2 weeks, August 4th, again on a Thursday. Yeah. Have a nice rest of your week.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks all. Bye.
Yeah. We can start the weekend now, right?
Yes, this is how you get an extra day off on a Thursday.
All right. Have a nice day.
You too. Cheers.
Bye.